Morning, good morning.
Hey, Leo,
What's up, everybody? What's up, y'all? We're getting started right away. No intro. We're going to jump right. Welcome to episode 70 of Politically Conscious. I've been rallying hard to get this show together. I got my brother Emil and Leo Smith in here once again as we give it to you straight, no chaser. Our motto is simply, hold on, I got a double talk here. Get that out of here. Sorry, y'all. All right, I should not hear that anymore. All right, y'all. Okay, I'm still hearing it. Okay, give me a second, y'all. Y'all hear that double talk? Y'all hear that double talk? Okay.
Nope, we don't hear it.
Figure it out. Emil, you said you heard it. All right, give me a second, y'all. I got to figure out. All right, y'all. We got a couple technical difficulties here. Not sure why I'm hearing a double talk. Typically, because I got it on in two places, but right now I don't think I do. That's gonna be hard for me to do a show hearing myself the entire time. All right, y'all, bear with us. Let me see. Let me try to take this down, man. All right, y'all. I'm gonna try to bear through the double talk. As long as y'all are not hearing it on the broadcast, I'm hearing myself twice at all times, but I'm not sure why.
Well, try not to listen to yourself.
All right, that's probably
it's a good tip. It's a good tip.
Because y'all are the extras here, so we're gonna make this work. All right, with that said, y'all, this is Politically Conscious episode 7. Our motto is, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. There's obviously a lot going on. I actually asked the question and brought you guys on because we obviously were on the the eve of this assassination attempt on Trump, the third one, right? 2 months prior to becoming president, and now his first one as president. So a lot to say about it. Don't want to get into the details that they're doing on the media, which is how it happened, who's at fault, and all this type of stuff. I wanted to go ahead and jump ahead and get both of your analysts' perspective on what this will lead to. Because previously, these assassination attempts seem to rally and boost Trump's number going into the presidency. So with that said, if you're just not tuning in, we all have some technical difficulties. Hopefully y'all are not hearing the double talk that I'm hearing over my side. Just let people know as they come in. And so with that said, let's jump into that discussion. Leo, give your background and give a thought. And then Leo, when you come in, give your background and give a thought. Again, just a little rough start because we had some troubles in the beginning for anybody watching. Emil, but what's your thoughts on this assassination attempt? What have you thought about it? And what do you think, will it help or hurt Trump and the Republicans going into the midterms? Let's start there.
So this is the weird thing that I'm seeing. First of all, Emil Bryant, I'm a political consultant and author. My job is to advise clients and politicians when they want to hear the hard truth, to tell the hard truth, tell it early, tell it often, because bad news does not get better with time, and voters need information with which to make informed and intelligent decisions. Having said that, this attempt will not change his political fortunes, because those political fortunes are much more than fleeting, and this attempt will fade in the news cycle. He was not harmed. In fact, it's going to stir up a lot more controversy as people ask, well, how did someone get so close to the president? And that's probably going to be more of a news item than the attempt itself. And because this is going to be fleeting and the problems in the administration are persistent, by the time we get to November, this, as much as they'll try to bring it up, is going to end up being a non-issue for the voter.
Leo, do you agree or disagree with Emil? Again, that's just a thought that I had. Will this one help rally the base?
Well, I mean, yeah, he's now, this is Leo Smith. I'm a former RNC strategist and principal of Engaged Futures Group, which is a government relations and political strategy company. Donald Trump is a man who wants to be important. This really is not about the Republican Party, is not about the electoral promise of the Republican Party, is really just about Donald Trump making his imprint. He is a man who has felt inadequate as he was reared as a child, and his entire goal is to be seen as one of America's great leaders. I mean, the narcissism and the self-imposition of will on us and on our democracy is such that he really doesn't really care about our midterm successes, and he doesn't really care about the success of how democracy works. What he cares about is, will he be remembered as a man who drastically impacted America? And so he does drastic things. And like all laws of physics, if you push hard in one way, the energy that thing that you pushed, our democracy, our people, it returns an energy. And that's why he is now the most inspired president when it comes to inspiring violence and attacks against him, because it is all about him, and that's why he's receiving these attacks. I don't think it's really going to have a whole lot to do with the midterms. I think more will have to do, the attacks won't have an impact on the midterms. What will have an impact on the midterms is affordability, right? The fact that we have rising gas prices, and the fact that we can't, the food, even for someone who can weather, and people who are in the market who can weather a little bit of this high cost of food, etc., it's still, it makes a difference. I'm taking on extra clients because, and I have the ability to do that, so I can afford this 30% increase on a lot of the products. But most Americans can't. And I think that is going to be the thing that is going to hurt Republicans in this upcoming midterm. And it is going to shape the election for 2028.
Good stuff. Again, that was just a thought that came to my head. So definitely was curious at what both of you thought as our political experts. Along those lines, another thing that's going to play a role in the actual midterms is the president's success or unsuccess, if you will, in the Iran war. I know the left paints kind of one picture, and the right, as I've been listening, because again, I try to watch in the media, so I bring it here and see what you guys think. The right are painting another picture. Here's a clip from Sean Hannity that kind of highlights how he sees the Iran war going just 6 days ago. So there's some things that could have that happened since this clip. So if there's anything more new, y'all can give it to me. But this is just something that Hannity said. And I do think this is an area where Trump has a chance. Like, I agree with you, Leo, that it is about him. So he doesn't necessarily care about the success of the Republicans specifically, because, again, it is about him. So that part I can agree with. However, the Republicans can turn some of this into their favor at the midterm and this might be an example of it per se. Let me show y'all what Hannity had to say.
Tonight we begin in the Middle East. According to the White House, a beaten, a battered, now near close to bankrupt Iran and government there will have no more than 3 to 5 days to present what would be a unified response to the president's peace proposal. Let me make this very simple. If anyone in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard or any other faction of Iran's, remaining government is watching, or you hear about this, I know you like Fox News, your unified response, it better look like this. No nukes, no terrorism, no attacks on the Strait of Hormuz, and nuclear dust, you can't have it. This is not a crazy list, not that complicated, and it's not too much to ask. In return, you will get to live. In return, your own people will have a shot at an economy that is not destroyed, not the radical Islamists who for 47 years have been terrorizing their very own people, not that they even care. Now, President Trump is now telling the New York Post that he is hopeful peace talks can resume as early as Friday. But today, Iran was too busy, shooting and attempting to seize commercial shipping vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. In 3 to 5 days, Iran will cease hostilities, agree to the president's terms, come to a negotiated settlement, or they will face total destruction. And now, if they are foolish, for those of you in Iran tonight, you might hear about this. If you're foolish enough to think the president, working at the request of Pakistan's prime minister to exhaust every possible path to peace and a negotiated settlement, is just another opportunity to stall, well, you're clearly the dumbest people on the planet, especially after Midnight Hammer and Epic Fury. Now, Kharg Island is already largely defenseless, responsible for 90% of Iran's oil exports. And in just, well, frankly, less than an hour, the U.S. military could level the entire island, obliterate Iran's oil industry, and with it, their entire economy. In about the same amount of time, the U.S. military can level critical infrastructure all across the country, force what's left of the regime to have to rebuild everything without almost any revenue. Remember, they're losing $400 to $500 million a day right now. It is a nightmare scenario for both the people and the government of Iran. But President Trump is prepared to act if the regime will not commit to opening the Strait of Hormuz, giving up their nuclear material. So time will tell. We will wait. We will all hope for peace. We'll all hope for a negotiated settlement. Frankly, you have to expect the worst. They have made one dumb decision after another. But as President Trump has stated, America's military, they are locked, they are loaded, they're ready to go. All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity.
Leo, I'll let you start. Your thoughts on, again, that reality that was 6 days ago. So if anything else has transpired that y'all want to mention, please do. But it seems like in this event that a lot of that, if a lot of that is correct, that may be a rallying cry per se for Republicans and even Trump's presidential rating, if nothing else, even if that is for himself.
Well, Trump will be able to say that he basically destroyed Iran's military capability. He brought them to their knees. You've got, over 1 million people now almost in a situation of starving in Iran. You've got the economy torn asunder in Iran. There's obviously, I don't think anybody can argue left or right that Iran has been weakened in a big way. Okay. So Trump is the kind of person who will rest on that, just that alone. I won the bully fight. That's good enough for him. For Republicans, as we look to the midterms and to the next presidential election, is their job to spin that the right way, no matter the outcome. And here's what they will say. They will say, you do not want to elect Democrats because they would have allowed Iran's nuclear proliferation and their bullying of the Middle East partners that we have in NATO as well as in America, those partners that we have, they will rise up that bar of what Trump has now allowed to have happen. And Republicans supported the idea of international global safety from an evil Iran. That's how they'll push it. Republicans will play that message. Democrats will be, as we say in golf, dormy. I mean, they will not be able to, because how do you come as a presidential candidate and say, oh, that shouldn't have been done? Then you're saying we should have allowed nuclear proliferation and missiles being shot to the neighbors in the Middle East. We should have allowed that to continue. Democrats will lose on that message. They're not strong enough to defeat the Republicans in a message that the Republicans allowing Trump to do what he did was the right thing. That's how they'll message it. Whether it's true or not, it doesn't matter. It's the messaging that matters.
Now it makes sense. I was listening to Hannity last night, and I heard him go as far as to talk about those missiles you're referring to going into Tel Aviv, Israel, and how much they're going through. So please rally and give money to help those people that are starving in Israel. Like I saw the messaging is definitely strong and being used in that manner. Emil, your thoughts on anything you agree or disagree with that Leo had to say about how the Republicans can rally the Iran, because it looks like that war is going to end, and how they will message. Any thoughts?
It doesn't look like it's going to end, Montoya. Last week and the last several days, we've seen the Straits of Hormuz barely being transited and ships being fired upon. For all intents and purposes, it's closed. Oil is under a closed spigot coming out of the Straits of Hormuz. The Iranians attacked the east-west pipeline in Saudi Arabia, so oil is literally coming to a drip out of that region. It's so bad that the UAE left OPEC effective on May 1st. That's a big deal because they see higher prices as an opportunity to make more money. The UAE right now it needs the money, so it's going to leave OPEC so it can no longer be under the quota. All of this points to a prolonged Iran conflict. This is not something that's going to end with threats. It's not going to end with a quote unquote blockade. It's not going to end with the American Navy boarding ships across the world. It's going to end when Iran and America agree, probably to the same terms that were similar to the JCPOA, the JCPOA from 2015. These are the problems that the Republicans are going to have to message. And I agree with Leo. They're going to message the hell out of this war, and they're going to be very successful and almost true to script. The Democrats are going to fumble messaging. And even though they have the right principle, they'll have the wrong message. The right principle is the president of the United States did not go to Congress and ask for a declaration of war or even an authorization to use military force under the War Powers Act. His 60 days are just about up. They'll be up on May 1st. And because of all of that, there is a precedent that will be shattered unless the Republicans vote for an authorization to use military force, which does not look like it's forthcoming in the next 2 days. If none of that happens, the principles remain. The president started a war, could not finish it quickly, and now has to suffer the consequences of that from negotiators who are doing a terrible job in Pakistan. The people he sent up there do not know what they're doing. And it's not me saying that. That's the professionals at the Council of Foreign Relations. That's the people, the Trilateral Commission, the people at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They're the ones who are saying that these people don't know what they're doing. And because of that, we do not have a pending resolution to this conflict. And that's going to persist. I don't see a way out of this easy. But to Leo's point, it ain't about the truth, it's about the message.
And I will say, I want to just add there, the UAE leaving OPEC is part of, Trump actually said he wanted to destroy OPEC. He's said that for years. And so OPEC is weakened. And with OPEC weakened, America is actually in a better position when it comes to dominating and shifting the energy markets. That's kind of what this is about, folks. And Trump's strategy, as far as that goes, if he wants to claim, I brought OPEC to his knees because they've been ripping off, quote, they've been ripping off the rest of the world. He's been saying that forever, right? So now he is like weakening them. This is +1 for Trump.
Now, this is a big deal, Montoya. One of the things about OPEC that many presidents have complained about is that they make really bad deals for the market, but really good deals for themselves. If you go back to Trump's first term, he made a deal with OPEC to squeeze down production, which actually drove the cost of oil up. So him wanting to break OPEC is after he made the deal to strengthen OPEC. So you're seeing both sides of the equation. President Obama did something. You can go back to President Clinton. You can go back to President H.W. Bush. You will find that all of these presidents have tried to figure out how to work within, work without. But to Leo's point, very rarely have you seen somebody make such a bold maneuver on OPEC that ended up with a apparent fracture out of the UAE. Because right now, oil prices are so high that they need the money so bad, they're just not willing to live under the quota system that OPEC says they must abide by. They want that money, and they want it now.
So, hey, y'all, anybody watching, y'all getting it straight, no chaser. I want to add into Leo's point. If we recall, we had a specific dialogue about the big picture of what's happening here. So right now, we kind of have soloed in on Iran, and there's the ins and outs of what it would mean politically. We've already kind of talked about that here in the moment, but I'm still reminded of the big picture, Emil. So while you say the war is not ending no time soon, I'm not saying you're wrong or right about that part. However, if the big picture is what we're trying to do long-term against China, everything we're doing in Iran has a whole different viewpoint than how it's being shown in the media. We specifically called out the media is not giving everybody the big picture. Big picture wise, this could be a monumental moment historically in Trump's record as president for how we're set up. now y'all are talking about, weakening OPEC, which is something that's going to be done. But the other thing is slowing down what China has wanted to do by having these restraints in the Strait of Hormuz. While our European partners are upset about it, they're going to be left with the mess. Big picture wise, we may have strengthened ourselves in the overall run of China hoping to become a superpower equal to us as the lone superpower currently right now. That's the long play. That if you didn't hear that show, remember 3 shows ago we were talking about that. So I'm bringing that to the y'all that are watching now. There's a big picture here you're not hearing about in the media. So I'm curious at what both of you think about that before I go to the next cut that takes us on a different subject. Any one of you could jump in on that.
Well, I'll jump in. So, but I'll let Emil sort of expand on it, but this is a real problem. And this is why your show and the kind of topic leadership that you provide, Montoya, is so important. And it's important for Americans, for people who watch politically conscious, to look for people who are willing to tell you what the media isn't telling you, the regular media telling you. Because you're right, Montoya, this is not being discussed at all. And you know why? Because there is such a thing as Trump derangement syndrome. It is real. And so therefore, even the media doesn't want to talk about this long-term strategy. Trump doesn't play three-dimensional chess. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's an idiot. And the fact is I can make a good swing in golf even when I didn't intend to. So you might at least give him the possibility of kind of stumbling into a good thing. Now, you have to ask yourself, is it good to be imperial? Is it good to be selfish on national interest? Sure, I can understand how you might not agree with that, but energy dominance, energy independence, changing the markets, killing the dominance of this oil cartel out of the Middle East that is sponsoring a lot of terrorism, the kind of terrorism we don't like. We're okay with soft terrorism. We're not okay with war type terrorism. So just being clear. So the fact is that Trump has put America in a really, really powerful position for the future. And the media won't even admit that.
Emil?
Yeah, so this is the thing that I think we often forget. China is a 5,000-year-old society that has its own strategy, and it knows America's plays as well as America does sometimes. And it's been preparing for just this disruption. Anybody who knows strategy knows the Strait of Hormuz is a big choke point. And so to say that China is being significantly affected on the oil front would assume that they didn't see it coming, and they did see it coming, and they've been preparing for this for several years. So they have over 1.5 billion barrels of oil in reserve that they're just barely tapping into. They have an export ban on the petroleum they produce in-house, and they're looking for other sources of oil all the time, and there are tankers still going to China right now full of oil. So you're seeing China already flexing its muscle in terms of being able to weather this storm, recognizing that it was coming. The other thing that you'll see that you won't see in the news, Montoya, is that there's other pressure at play besides oil, right? Oil feeds a lot of the economy around the world, but there's also food crises that are happening, and there's also manufacturing crises happening around the world because of the oil and because of the disruption of trade through the Strait of Hormuz, not just oil, but all trade through the Strait of Hormuz, including something that every nation right now needs, which is fertilizer. A bunch of fertilizer is produced inside the Gulf, and it was exported through the Gulf. So now there's a food crisis happening around the world because fertilizer is beginning to wane, and there's not enough spare capacity outside the Gulf to make up for the loss that is coming from the Strait of Hormuz. So all of these factors affect China. You're not hearing all these factors in the news, by the way. You're not hearing how fertilizer is affecting nations around the world. You're not hearing how manufacturing is being affected specifically in China because of the change and the disruption in the economy. You're not seeing that stuff because the news right now is, to Leo's point, focused on Trump and what he does at a micro level. And unfortunately, we're not seeing the strategic plays, some of which, to Leo's point, are happenstance, some of them are intentional, and some of them are just second and third order effects that can't be predicted until you experience it. And most of that stuff is going right over our heads because the mainstream media isn't willing to just talk about what's happening outside of the big story.
All right, this is a.
And I want to add.
Go ahead, Leo.
I want to add to what Montoya is saying. I mean, not Emil is saying, Montoya, because it is important for people to understand and go back. Remember, even before Russia and the Ukraine war, what we had was China. China was the great evil. China, right? And so that remains. And China has benefited from the strength of OPEC, from the relationship with Iran. They benefit greatly from that. So now we know that what Emil is saying is true. Why? Because China, since in 2024, they doubled their investment in renewable energy, solar, wind, right?
Absolutely.
They doubled it. They are the world leaders. We're not even close. $625 billion alone in 2024 they invested. Okay? So they are predicting that oil will be such a volatile commodity, and they predicted probably that America would eventually do something because who has the biggest oil reserves? We do. And so they go, we don't want to have to depend on America. So they've invested in alternative energy, so they're not having to be on the American tit for oil.
Right. And so what we highlighted, because everything y'all have just said, we've highlighted on a previous show. And so for everybody to understand the play, because the media is driven, Israel's controlling us and all this type of stuff. And as we explained to y'all, Israel doesn't control us. Our long-term interest. So what for people out here again, whether we're successful at this or not, the attempt to do what we're doing now is to slow down what Leo just talked about. They've already become the world leader. China has already become the world leader in these alternative energies, but at this moment, they're still very dependent. To Emil's point, they've doubled their oil reserves because being the leader right now, they're a big, large country. They're not able to be off the tit at this moment. This strike at this time, while we were willing to allow it to look like it's Israel-led, we're giving y'all the big pitch play here. While as a country, we're allowed to make it look like Israel's controlling us. Our own real interest is, can we slow them down by doing this now? And so even with their, like Emil said, they're preparing for it. This is geopolitics on the highest level. So they're preparing for it. We're just trying to put a monkey wrench in it to maintain our world leader supremacy. That's what's happening here. And like I said, there's a potential that long-term wise, this moment will be remembered. Again, whether you like Trump or not, this is the big picture.
Montoya, you're hitting it.
Go ahead.
I just got to say this. You're hitting it because right now, for instance, in America, even with the price of oil skyrocketing, the rig count, the number of rigs producing oil in America is actually lower than it was in 2025. So what that tells us is that the American oil infrastructure, the people who run that infrastructure, are not betting on America producing more oil right now. They're not saying we want to take advantage of these higher prices right now. What they're saying is we're going to look around the world for other sources of oil. And that tells you that there's a new power emerging in the oil economy because Canada, Guyana, Nigeria, and Ecuador are all places where the infrastructure is about to grow, right? Let's not forget Venezuela. Let's not forget the traditional powerhouse that America is, because we still have capacity that we can expand if we really want to. So if you're looking at a restructuring of the entire energy economy in real time. Now, I'm not telling you it's going to be for America or against America. I can't predict that. But what I can tell you is that it will not look like it did last year.
Hey, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. All right, let's transition into, and I think Leo alluded to it, the media's singularly focused for the political reasons that it is. We talked about this last week, that the media is not serving as the watchdog that it should serve in our republic to help us as the people. right? Like the media, to a degree, is being driven, money driven to the point where it's no longer serving the role that it is. We have our branches of the government. They're supposed to balance against each other. You go throughout American history, you can see one branch had more power than the other. But our founding fathers, if you will, did set up in a sense, a balance of power between the three branches. Again, that moves back and forth. And the media in itself is not a branch written into the government, but it is supposed to serve as the watchdog to say, hey, here's everything that's going on, to kind of help us be informed. The media has lost that. And so President Trump went on 60 Minutes, and I wanted to get y'all thoughts on this, if you will. So let me play this clip that everybody sees.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this: I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that, because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and I
these
was
are
never,
the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead, let's finish the interview.
So our brother Shelley Winters agrees completely with President Trump in reference to 60 Minutes. That's basically looked at as an attack. That approach and read that to the president as if it was about him. And so, Shelley's on the show all the time, and that's what he said. He says he actually highlighted that whoever owns that led the media should damn fire body ethics. That was his perspective. So, Emil, your thought behind 60 minutes to go as president in that.
The president has a history of yelling at, dealing with, belittling any media outlet that doesn't favor him. It doesn't matter if it's Fox News or 60 Minutes. If it doesn't favor him, he's going to say so, and that's something that he's known to do. Where we should be all concerned isn't that he does what Trump does. That's normal. We should be concerned that we have a media that will not look at things with a critical lens consistently. They'll do it very symptomatically, right? They'll find a reason to dive deep in one area, but they won't do the critical analysis throughout the things that are in front of the nation. If they were to do that more consistently, we would find out that they have some insight that we as the voter, we as the American public need to hear. But right now, we're putting a lot of them on ignore because they do this debate. They do this gotcha kind of journalism. They do this stuff that requires very little critical thought and very little critical analysis. And whether or not the president is what the manifesto says he is or not, the fact is that confronting him with the manifesto has no bearing on whether or not this attempt was one of those that is from a larger systematic point of view or a lone point of view. Like, was he really a lone wolf gunman, or was he part of a larger network that is doing something of this? That's where the media should be going. We should be looking at the roots of this behavior, trying to see if there's in fact a pattern. If there is a pattern, what is it? Where is it? Where does it originate? There's a school teacher from California that does this thing, that comes out of character. And if it is out of character, we should know why. And we shouldn't be asking the president about the manifesto itself. That to me is disingenuous journalism, because it doesn't get to the root of the actual issue.
Leo,
This is a big problem. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem. You know, I'm not going to, throw a grenade in the room and say that 60 Minutes everybody should be fired. But I agree with Shelley's, impulse about it. But that doesn't help anything in American democracy. It doesn't help anything when it comes to First Amendment, but it does require us to shift how we look at the media, right? The fourth estate, right? Legislative branch, executive branch, judicial branch, the fourth estate, the media. Supposed to be the watchdog, supposed to be telling us what's going on, things that matter for the moment, right? But what she decided to do, because she's probably being pressured for ratings by her producers and executives and the money makers of her company, she was acting like a talk show host. She's acting like she's on The View. And that is where she fails and journalism fails. Last night, I went to an event celebrating elite Black scholars who attend private schools. There was a young lady who came to keynote the event. She left an elite Black private school as a high scholar, decided she wanted to do journalism, right? She said once she started looking, she got to college, and once she started looking into what journalism was, it turned her stomach. Now, if she had been back in the days of Barbara Walters, she probably would have been okay. But today's journalism, this is a young lady who graduated in 2019, and now she's like, and she has all the look of a person who's going to be really great at journalism, right? And the diction, the expertise, the education, Ivy education. She goes, I could not do it. I can't do it. And she decided to become an astrophysicist instead. And so,
that's how brilliant she is. Wow.
That's how brilliant she is. And so listen to her. Journalism, you're losing your best and your brightest possibilities. The people who can really show the integrity of the fourth estate, you're losing them. You're going to get the same kind of clown car show that performative politics has created to make a Donald Trump possible, right? That has all these folks doing the Barnum Bailey thing in politics. That's what you're now attracting to journalism.
This is why, Leo, you're hitting it. This is why so many people are turning to comedians, and so many people are turning to citizen journalists, and so many people are looking at alternative news sources because they're not confident that they're getting the full story or even a good story out of the mainstream media, and that's why their ratings are falling. One of the things that happened over the past year, we can talk about the fairness doctrine from the past, but really the worst thing that happened to journalism in the past 30 years was the turn toward corporate ownership. And we can talk about that in a whole other show if you want to. But the fact is, news centers used to be a service provided to the American people on behalf of the nation because we give them the airwaves. We say, the people said, you may use our airwaves. In turn, you will inform us a couple of times a day about what's going on in the world. When that contract was broken by corporate ownership, news centers went from a service to a profit center. And that fundamentally changed how news is done.
No, absolutely. And just real quick, I'm just checking because I'm still here. But Emil, when he's talking to Leo, you're not hearing talk, right?
I'm not hearing any echo. I hear you clear, loud and clear. You're wonderful.
I'm just making sure. I want to make sure I checked during the show that it was just still on my side of things. Okay, cool. All right. So I love everything y'all pointed out. Again, this is, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. This is a major turn, that point that you're talking about, Emil. And again, that's why politically conscious exists. We're trying to weed through all of this, if you will. I also wanted to highlight this. I just happened to see this cut recently. Young guy named Adam Mockler has become very popular, young guy on the left, if you will. And he was on CNN talking about Trump. I remember personally, maybe about three or 4 years ago, maybe about 3 years ago, there's these 5-minute podcasts. I forget the name of the company. I started doing them, and one of the first one I did was talking about the president's rhetoric and how it was going to affect our country based on that position, right? I remember in that 5-minute podcast, I always highlighted how Clinton and what he did with the Lewinsky or whatever, how that was such a stain for that action to take place with the president's office. Because historically, we didn't have a social media to the extent that presidents done things like that in the past. It was kept under wraps on purpose because you didn't want to denigrate the position of the president. It was a position of dignity. I highlighted that Trump's rhetoric was extremely risky for that position, and that it was going to be detrimental for our republic overall. So this cut kind of points to that, and I'm just going to get y'all thoughts on the president's rhetoric leading to what we see now. And Emil, I'll play the cut, and then I got something I want to specifically ask of Emil after the cut.
Oh, look at who we have here, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is so racist. The reason he went...
Can't you just take responsibility for it?
Oh,
on the left.
Let's not do the like.
Hold on 1 second. Let me do this.
Oh, look at who we have here, Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is so racist. The reason he went bald is because his hair was black. Stephen Miller puts the cyst in white supremacist. He's like if baby Hitler traveled in time to kill us.
We can't figure out why Kimmel still has a job. What was her reaction when she heard that?
Because he's a comedian. I can't figure out why Trump still has a job.
Well, I think initially the reaction is Kimmel needs to go. It's time that ABC stands up and terminates his employment. Why does ABC and the advertisers want to stand behind Kimmel when over and over again, for such a long time now, he spews this hateful rhetoric, this political divisiveness? It's clear that his intent is not to entertain. He's not funny. He's not a comedian.
So any administration that deems a comedian not funny personally can then just be like, we're going to strip your FCC licenses and make sure that you can't be on air. So imagine the next administration comes in, whether it's like Ossoff or Newsom or whether it's Kamala, whoever the hell the next administration is, AOC, and they're like, listen, I just don't find Jesse Waters very funny. I don't know why he's being beamed to the stations of Americans' homes when he's just objectively not funny. And I can be objective about, comedy because, I don't know, he's an arbiter of comedy for some reason. And then they remove Fox News from the airwaves. You don't want to go down that slippery slope.
Well, he responded last night. What does Melania think about that? Is she buying it?
It's done. It's over. Jimmy Kimmel should be terminated from ABC.
What is this victimhood tour? What is this victimhood tour? Why is the advisor to Melania Trump going from station to station, crashing the hell out? Here's Jimmy Kimmel last night.
Also, I agree that hateful and violent rhetoric is something we should reject. I do, and I think a great place to start to dial that back would be to have a conversation with your husband about it, because...
Thank you. That is the exact point that I've been making this entire time. Hold Trump to the high standard that you're going to hold comedians to.
All right, I actually played the wrong cut, so I got a 1 minute cut, and we'll just put it all together so I can make it make sense. Production error there, y'all.
Can't you just take responsibility for it?
Oh,
on the left.
Me? Let's not do the he has to take responsibility because he's a Democrat.
You sat here and said, I need to take responsibility. I'm a 22-year-old YouTuber. You hold me to a higher standard than the man that
I'm
we
holding
just
you to your standard of your punditry.
Donald
Your
Trump was
punditry
just
is that Trump's
vomiting
fault.
vitriol out of his mouth about how the other party is weak and evil. And he just said, the party of hate, evil, and Satan. You blind yourself to that, and you're focusing on a 22-year-old YouTuber. All of this escalation can be traced back to his entrance into American politics. His claim to fame was saying that Obama wasn't born in America. He was the first presidential candidate to have his crowd chant, "Lock her up," about a political opponent. You can bring up the insurrection. He posted a photo of Chicago being invaded by the Department of War. So the broader point here is Donald Trump endlessly deflects and tries to blame it on the other side when he is the one responsible for amping up the tension in America. And I've spent all of my formative years throughout high school, throughout college, looking to the president, who I'm supposed to be able to look up to, and seeing somebody who's trying to place blame on the left, who's amping up the rhetoric constantly. And yeah, it's not good.
So let's start with that cut, and we'll circle back to the one I played out of order, right? So where I wanted to start was, again, I highlighted personally a few years ago, President Trump becoming the president and the rhetoric that he used was going to be detrimental. Actually, it was longer than that ago. It was before the first term. Let me get my time period. But it was in his first term, before he became president, I was highlighting this rhetoric is going to be detrimental to our republic. And so, Emil, what I wanted you to do as well is to talk about to a degree that while the news says this, it's not the worst rhetoric that we've seen politically per se, but it's, I think, coming from the president specifically, how it hurts and is detrimental. And so I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts about where we moved since Trump was president. The first time where our republic has moved through the rhetoric, how we sometimes admit that rhetoric plays a role in how our republic works. That makes sense.
So you kind of have to go back to the presidents before, because one of the things that you'll see is like Theodore Roosevelt had what he called the bully pulpit. He wanted to use the power of the presidency to advance on a specific agenda. And typically what you'd see in presidents is they will use the bully pulpit as a way to say, hey, I want stronger defense. I want more money for welfare. I want to improve health care. Bully pulpit's usually been used for a very specific agenda, and typically it's been policy related. Very rarely is it personal. But to your point, the rhetoric from President Trump has been publicly very, very personal. He has gone after specific individuals. He's named names. And the problem when the president does that is that it now degenerates the conversation to a specific individual instead of a policy. Instead of looking at outcomes, we're looking at what someone would consider justice. And so instead of looking at ways to make America flourish in ways that Americans can best see, we're seeing a lot of vindictive behavior and rhetoric coming out of the president. When you put all that together, what you're seeing is that the president who has that bully pulpit is creating what Leo talked about earlier, a reaction. Every action to drive a reaction. And so the reaction to a lot of this is defensiveness, it's fears, and a lot of it is actually, to the nation's credit, people looking back to the Constitution and asking, are we really like this? Is this what the Constitution says we should do, or how we should act, what we should, how we should proceed forward? And so there's this reaction to the bully pulpit that happens amongst every presidency, but this presidency specifically has been very specific in its commentary and rhetoric, and because of that, the reactions have been just as drastic and just as incendiary.
So, Leo, I'll ask you to add on just to be trying to make it clear for those that are watching. I think it's necessary that we, as the league, as one powerful vote, that we are aware of this level of legitimacy when it comes to rhetoric and how it affects our political process. I think we know, in a sense, President Trump masterfully played to those fears in the politics parties both do it. But him individually, who he is, again, it's not just pointing a finger at him. It's about realities of how it's played out that we have to be aware, or otherwise we will stay in the place. In my opinion, we won't be as effective in how we choose leaders in the future due to some future. I may be going too far with that, but what are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look, let's not put this in a bubble. We have to look at Trump in politics as part of a larger system, right, that is impacted by innovation and new things in technology, including the power of sharing messages through the internet in a fast way using social media, and the algorithmic preference that social media be in short form. So if I get you hooked on the sensationalism of saying something like I said earlier when I said China doesn't want to have to be on the American tit, if all you got was that, if I use that and I continue to say things like that that are sensational without the 2 minutes before and the 2 minutes after that we intelligently discuss the economic impact of OPEC leaving, right? People then, unless you give that kind of thing, our populace is vulnerable to that one little statement I made without understanding what it's about. And so then when I go into the nuances and the details of the reason for OPEC, it's not sexy. It doesn't turn me on. It doesn't fire my dopamines like I want to do. So Trump understood that as an entertainer. He was an entertainer before he was anything else. He understood that. He took advantage of the opportunity. He took advantage of social media and short form video. So yes, the young man is right. Why aren't you holding them to the standard? But what the young man doesn't understand is that Trump never had that standard. That he is not a statesman in the ways of Jefferson or James Madison or anybody who then also believes that we should have a moral conscience in America. He's not the king coming from King Charles coming over here and speaking about the virtues of partnership, collaboration, reason, and truth. He's taking advantage of this mental health warfare that we have for the brain rot opportunity that creates a dumber electorate, a dumber consumer, a consumer more like addicted to the short form video and the stupid comments. Now, I'm committed to education because we have to reshape that. Of course, when you look at it like the city of Atlanta, I'm about to do a speech with Brian Johnson, our superintendent of education, today at 2:00. I'm going to be talking about these issues. And when you look at Atlanta with the third grade average, 30% at reading level, 30%, then you expand that to the American electorate. They're not equipped to be able to defend themselves against both the social media and bad actors like Donald Trump and other entertainers who come in. There's nothing wrong with Jimmy Kimmel's doing what he's doing. He's a comedian. I've said to you for years that I don't go to comedians for political consciousness, for political knowledge. But Americans have been reared to not know the difference. And as we already discussed, the real journalism isn't helping them either.
Yeah, and so leading into that second clip, and we won't go too long because for sake of time, I know Emil has to get out of here as well. Leading into that second clip with the Jim, you got time? Okay, cool. But with the Jimmy Kimmel thing, like people can actually hear, oh, we need to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel and not understand the big picture of you should never have the executive branch going after the media that way. Like that's the basics of just what you, in a sense, should have learned in civic in the 7th or 8th grade, right? But again, to Leo's point, only 30% of a populace in the, in this major city on reading level, then we definitely understand. They would know. And so now it becomes, so do you like the president or do you not like the president? So whether so Trump does it in this case, or the administration talks down on Jimmy Kimmel. But if you think that's okay, now we will allow any president, whether you like them or not, to start, as Adam Mockler correctly pointed out, to start going after comedians and then those who are just entertainers, and we would have lost sight of that's not the Republic was set up to be the antithesis of that, and we as the people we have lost sight of why we even became a country. I hope I'm making that all make sense.
You're making great sense, Montoya, and this is the thing that I think Leo and you and me, the three of us, agree on, is that it takes an informed and educated electorate to see past this. And right now, what you see is the onslaught of AI, the sort of retrenchment of the media from its traditional fourth estate role. Plus, you're seeing a politician who is more entertainer than statesman. All of that is combining at the same time. And the casualty here, in my opinion, is critical thinking, right? That's the thing that's not being nurtured. It's not being nourished. It's not being fomented. It's not being cultivated. So you really have to be somebody who's willing to invest the energy, time, and effort to make a decision that what I see is not all there is. And then do the hard work of going not just to another source, but maybe multiple sources. And people feel like they don't have time, they don't have the toolkit, the education, or the mental capacity to do that kind of research. So what do? They take the shortcut. They go to the comedian, they go to the president, they go to, and if the president says, yeah, so I'm going to take your life, it feels good to hear the president push back against his enemy. So the problem with that feel good is that you may surrender your constitutional right to that feeling. And the problem is, if perchance the president in 2028 does not run again, which is in the Constitution as he should not, the next guy might be worse than this guy. And I don't want the next guy to be worse. I want there to be no precedent. I want all of us to be willing to invest a little bit of the time to have the thought that what I see is not all there is, and figure out what is the truth for ourselves, which is hard. But to Leo's point, if we don't push it now, it'll only get worse faster.
Hey, you just understand the whole purpose of politically conscious. Like, like that's what we're here for. So I'm going to end the show last clip with a shameless clip from my book, Re-Education of the Negro. For me, this is my perspective of, if you will, predicting, in a sense, what we see now. Leo, you've alluded to something that you're going to hear in this clip, which is I speak to the grievances that led to what we're witnessing right now. And I call Donald Trump, Black Socrates speech, Donald Trump as president. So I'm going to play this clip so everybody watching this is actually from my book. Go out on Amazon and get it. It's a short commentary to create dialogues like you're about to speak. So I'll let y'all bear through this short commentary, get both of y'all responses, and we'll go. All right, y'all. Day 11 on Re-Education of the Negro. 30 days of commentaries out of my book, Necessary Conversations on Race, Sex, and Culture. This piece was written back in May 2016. Black Socrates speaks, Trump as Captain America. I saw a CNN headline that said Trump aide says a minority or woman VP may be pandering. One thing about Trump is that he stumps hard for the biggest unequivocal victim group currently in America, conservative white men. Think about it. If you're a white man in America, the passing down of wealth, or even the exchanging of wealth, has taken place almost exclusively among other white men. Maybe this is why they're offended by some other group they perceive to be taking their power every time we turn around. For them, President Obama was the final straw in the browning of America, even though over the last 8 years, Obama helped the wealthiest Americans get richer than they've ever gotten in American history. Yet, their fear continues to create false narratives that fan the flames of tribalism within our country to an all-time high, and Trump is their leader. They see Trump as someone who understands their plight, and in their eyes, he can make America great again and keep it white. With race relations seemingly at an all-time low, you would even think we are on the brink of another civil war between black and white. However, the ensuing battle of America's wealth and resources will come down to a fight between gray versus brown. According to the census, by 2043, whites will no longer be the country's majority. When the children of current baby boomers look to retire, it will be the first time in American history that the transfer of property and wealth in the country will increasingly include people of color, particularly Hispanics. These ever-changing demographics should be considered part of the melting pot our country always brags about, but has yet to fully practice. The election of Obama was thought to be the turning point in the right direction of a post-racial society. Still, unfortunately, the backlash, particularly from conservative white men, created a volatile political climate that birthed Donald Trump as the working man's champion. Ironically, Trump inherited his wealth versus the majority of wealthy people do not. Now he's Captain America. LOL, if there ever was one. If this election were a Shakespearean play, instead of the comic book it is, Donald Trump as president would surely be a tragedy. One last note. Keep in mind, historically, these conservative white men are the same ones that didn't grant citizenship to Native Americans born here until 1924. I guess once you're in power, right and wrong are what you make them. Remember, for those in a position of privilege, equality always seems unfair. Just my 3 cents. All I ask is that you think. In the accompanying discussion questions, listen closely. They will make you think. Number 1, how ironic is it that President Donald Trump, who came from money, unlike most wealthy people, became a champion of the working class poor? Number 2, all right, Brother Leo, any thoughts to that first question, or just any thoughts about the piece itself? Oh, you're on mute, brother.
So yeah, there we go. So I don't really agree that Donald Trump became the champion of the working class poor. That's the message. That's the tack he took, right? That's the strategy that he took, because when you really look at it, they're the ones that are losing. The working class poor that is voting for Trump are voting actually beyond their self-interest, unless the idea of a white nationalism identity is the thing that they're really voting for. And so when you look at, and I have lots of super academic political scientists and economists and anthropologists who always say, Leo, why do people vote for him against their own interests? Well, because they didn't go to Stanford, Cal Tech. They didn't go to Georgia Tech. They're not looking at things the way you're looking at. They're looking at their vulnerability and the fact that he's speaking to it, like you address in your book, Montoya. So that's, if things look irrational, they are probably irrational. And so if it's irrational, then it's based on fear. Trump has manipulated that. You've so clearly pointed that out. And that's where we are. Yes, it'll probably get worse with the next Republican candidacy, and we have to demand differently. The danger for what Trump is doing, even though the strategy makes sense for him as far as having power over the resources, that's politics. The strategy makes sense. The strategy makes sense to try and make America a power, the American elite a power, the white male status quo power structure. But at some point, you might be creating a condition where people want to overturn the government, right? Just like the white males wanted to do it as soon as they saw some of their power starting to leak. So we got to figure out how to make this democracy work for more people, even if you only share the crony capitalism, But if you don't figure that out, as Trump talks about the wells in Iran are going to explode, which they know how to cap the wells. If you don't figure out, you can't cap people. You can't cap the people. If you don't figure out how to make sure that the people can move freely with liberty and pursue prosperity in America, yes, they will explode.
Yeah, history has shown us exactly what you're saying, Leo. And I would highlight, because I said this in the very beginning when we first started the show, I had a show where I was adamant to Emil. I think Shelley might have been on. You may have been on for that show, where I was actually saying when it comes to the dialogue amongst ourselves politically, because again, you could be, as you say, informed or uninformed, whatever you want to call it. But I always say, stop saying people are voting against their interests. The reason I say stop saying it, because to your point in the example you just gave, if that's somebody's lead interest, regardless of how we look at their conditions and their economics, that's their interest. You can't tell them they're not smart and they're wrong. So stop saying that people are voting against their interest. You don't know what somebody's individual lead interest is, and even the one conditioned voter, whatever we always say about it. Like, stop that rhetoric. Like, we're not helping massage our role in this republic by continuing to spew to one another, you're dumb. There's no win in that. Even if you disagree wholeheartedly with the other person, there's no chance of coming together if you keep calling them dumb. It says, why are you voting against your own points? You're calling them dumb. And therefore, they're never going to side with you on anything that y'all both may need one day. You'll be opposed on something you need because you called them dumb first. So I'm real particular about how we speak on this show as well, politically conscious. Emil, your thoughts on the piece or the question itself?
So I love your book, and I've read almost all of the essays in there. And the thing that I think I heard in this one that, hearing it again, was your understanding that equality is a threat. And that's where a lot of people, because this nation has been so imbalanced for so long, that people feel like the imbalance is normal. And when you upend the imbalance and try to bring balance back into it, try to bring equity and equality back into it, it feels threatening. It's like, where's my old position? Well, not too long ago, we had something called white citizens councils. Those white citizens councils kept the peace in neighborhoods around the South. those white citizens councils were just a front for the KKK. Those white citizens councils were the power. When the power moved away from those men felt threatened. It doesn't mean that they were right. It doesn't mean that their interests were correct. It means that the power was imbalanced. Those members of those councils had children and grandchildren. People who yelled at Ruby Bridge had children and grandchildren. The question we have to ask is, those children and grandchildren educated through the old? Because we don't see what happens in the kitchen. We don't see what happens in the bedroom. We don't see what happens in the backyard. And because of that, we don't know if we don't feel threatened by equality, even in 2026, the way they felt threatened by the potential for equality in 1956. That 70-year gap doesn't necessarily mean the society, the nation has progressed. And certainly if it has progressed, it hasn't been linear and it hasn't been comprehensive. So you have people in 2020 who feel like equality is a threat to their existence in this nation. And they're fighting, they're battling equality tooth and nail because they feel so threatened by it that they think it's existential, that it will result in them no longer being here or having a place here at all.
And the saddest thing about all of that is that sentiment actually takes our society away from elevating. Because at the end of the day, the American experience itself, the American experience, we have all of this. We don't have a homogeneous country just based on who lives there, right? The whole history, right? How we became this first country. You think about America, like people don't put this in perspective, but these are the things I think about. Like America is able to go win the 100-meter race because it's able to put its own slavery poverty based on the history and the actual breeding, if you will. We're winning the 100-meter race and the 200-meter race, right? We just won the math competition, and the whole team is Chinese Americans. Like we're the only country that can do that, if you will. Right? I'm just kind of highlighting these things to be funny but realistic about how we're able to, when we need the best, we can take the best of the world. We always do it in competition. We miss that in society. To your point, Emil, figures, we're actually lowering ourselves, and not just simply want to compete. And not just America. Think about history. Where did advancement always take place? Where the ports were. Right? Because that's where the most groups came together. Oh, what are y'all doing over there? What are y'all doing over there? In various cultures came together. Then that was the advancement. It's kind of how America its own history, as much as it's been a difficult history for us as African Americans. We played a role. That's why our ancestors were leaking some of the top blacks to the presidential lawn prior to the Civil War and saying, "Hey, what do you think if I just sent y'all back to the motherland?" We didn't call it motherland, of course. We're 200 years removed. We know nothing of that land. It's our home. And since that time, we've stepped ourselves, played a significant role in this American experience. We're here now. We all elevate if we don't allow politics to play to our fears. Let's be more informed. 38% of our country graduated college. Not that college isn't saying makes you better, but the majority of our republic has not thinking skills that college is supposed to teach. That's all now in question now, right? College is always doing a great job of raising our critical thinking. That's why we're here as political consciousness, to raise consciousness of our republic, specifically our community, because not enough media doing what we're doing. So thank both of you for your time. Emil, I always come at you close the show.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Montoya, and thank you to all our viewers. You guys have been phenomenal in your comments today, and it's been lively and active, and I appreciate all of it. So what do we try to do, Montoya? What do we try to do, Leo? We try to unpack the headlines, because the problem is the headlines are telling a very limited story. So what we know about America today is that the story is behind the headline. So Montoya, keep bringing us clips. Leo, keep bringing your insight and your intelligence. I'll do the same. And to our viewers, keep commenting and keep sharing. We love to see you out there, because your listening to us helps us make our product better. Because if you're tired of the propaganda, Montoya,
listen to us. Hey, thank y'all. The viewership is going way up. Thank y'all for your support. Keep sharing the show. And we out of here. We'll pop up on y'all next week.